elected
the
after
premise of your
President
question
Trump.
is completely silly.
Jeff Rath addresses the rumors. This is a fascinating interview with Rath Kapelos at CTV. Plus, I'm going to weave in some other clips. Enjoy.
Hi, Mr. Rath. It's great to meet you. I appreciate you making the time
Well, I
today.
really appreciate you having me on today. Thank you.
I listened to some of the interviews you've given to other media this week, and you were disputing the reporting that garnered all that reaction from the premiers. And I wanted to actually just get you on the record.
Oh, sure.
So we can
the
clarify.
Financial Times piece, I'll state for the record, it was fake news. I'm very careful with anybody to say that we haven't been offered any money by the United States. We're not seeking money from the United States. We're conducting a feasibility study on the availability of a sufficient credit facility to get Alberta over the hump in the hypothetical eventuality that Ottawa is going to play hardball and try to cut off our money once Alberta declares itself independent.
So I'll go quickly to this Financial Times because the article I'm sure they're referencing, I think, is behind a paywall, but you can see the title, Albertan separatists accused of treason over Trump administration meetings. And then, I don't know what's in the actual content of that article, but I'm guessing they're talking about that one. Back to this interview here.
A hypothetical eventuality that Ottawa is going to play hardball and try to cut off our money once Alberta declares itself independent from Canada. So, that FT article, starts out covert meetings between U.S. officials and fringe separatists. It was ridiculous. It was just a hit piece, by the globalist media. I'm really disappointed in the FT, actually. I used to read it when I was going to law school in London, and the paper's really gone downhill if that's the kind of trash they're publishing.
So what I had noticed when I read it was that I had read other reporting previously that you had made trips to the United States. So
there's no doubt. No doubt we're making
Can you
trips
just
to the United
explain
States.
what you are doing?
We've held press conferences to tell people that we're going to the United States. We're exchanging information with senior officials in the U.S. State Department over the aspirations of Alberta for Albertans for independence, and talking to them.
And by the way, the Quebec separatists back in the day also met with Americans. Check this out.
Then there was the Alberta things. I should say, because I covered a previous referendum, that the U.S. back then did have conversations with people from the Parti Québécois and the sovereigntist movement to inform their analysis of what was happening. I will also say that the context is very different.
Sounds pretty similar to what Rath and whoever else was down there are being accused of now. Sounds like pretty similar to inform their analysis of what was happening.
Also say that the context is very different this time. There has never been any sympathy on the part of Quebec sovereigntists for becoming parts of the U.S., and there has never been interest on the part of an administration in the U.S. for annexing part of Canada. So we're somewhere else completely.
Dude, that is used as a way to bully Canadians. The 51st state trolls from Trump. We've got to stop falling for that as a general Canadian people. It's been almost a year now. Actually, it'd be more than a year now of Canadians being bullied into positions because of President Trump's trolling.
Them about the types of things that would help Alberta move forward as a free and independent country. And it's already paying dividends. We had Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, the second most powerful man in the world, repeating what we told the State Department officials back in December, that aspirationally Alberta would love to have a pipeline through the U.S. Pacific Northwest to the West Coast.
Alberta is a wealth of natural resources, but they won't let him build a pipeline to the Pacific.
Because we're sick and tired of David Eby threatening us with a veto and saying we're only going to get a pipeline over his dead body and all of the foolishness that comes out of his mouth. And of course, the reaction to that from David Eby, when he saw that his power was being taken away and that he no longer had he was no longer going to have power to constrain oil and gas development in Alberta on behalf of his communist masters in China, right, was to jump up and down and have a hysterical little hissy fit and say that we're engaged in treason and that real Albertans don't support independence. It was the most ridiculous display of on behalf of a premier that I've ever seen. He should be embarrassed, really.
If we take David Eby...
Agree.
To go to a foreign country and to ask for assistance in breaking up Canada, there's an old-fashioned word for that, and that word is treason.
Out of the equation.
Jeff Rath is so good in these interviews. I got more to say on that, but this guy is great at handling the media.
Second, can you understand how on the face of it, Canadians would view, some Canadians outside of the ones that support your cause, who are not necessarily unempathetic to the frustrations expressed by people in this province, but who would view the idea of, people here meeting with a government that has, spoken the way it has about this country as a whole as problematic and seeking money to...
I just showed the clip. USA is going to be there no matter who is in charge, meaning who's the president of USA, whatever the American president is saying, USA is still there. It's still the world superpower. It's still directly below Canada. Come on.
I understand that there's a lot of Ontarians and people in Quebec that suffer deeply from Trump derangement syndrome, but we're not doing anything untoward. It's absolutely, from our perspective, we're just conducting due diligence on behalf of our fellow Albertans. We're serious professionals. I mean, I've argued cases at the Supreme Court of Canada, for goodness sake. I mean, we take what we're doing very seriously, and obviously the attitude of the United States towards Alberta independence, which incidentally is overwhelmingly enthusiastic, is something that informs our movement going forward. If the United States said, oh God, we can't tolerate that, flies in the face of, the communist New World Order, we'll slap a 300% tariff on Albertans if they leave because we want you to remain resource slaves of the communist government in Ottawa, it would be a totally different conversation. But that's not the case. We're gratified that it's the case. And quite frankly, the Trump administration shows...
It's so refreshing to finally see someone in Canada who's getting some mainstream attention, not buy in to the mainstream narrative. I've never seen this in my entire life in Canada. Even the conservatives that I see, for the vast majority of the time, they buy into the CBC framing on questions. They stay in this little box. This is so refreshing to see again. I've literally never seen this in my entire life in Canada.
Albertans far more respect than is shown to Albertans by the government in Ottawa. Do you think three of us could get a meeting with Tim Hodgson to talk about the need for a pipeline to the Pacific Northwest so that David Eby can't continue to hold us hostage? Of course not, because they want us to be held hostage. So I understand that there are Canadians that are upset, especially in Ontario, that when Alberta leaves, that Ontarians for the first time in their lives are going to have to pay their own bills and pay the bills of the Maritimes that we've been paying for years. I understand that's upsetting to people. But they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Do you believe, though, that the motivations of the people you're meeting with or in the Trump administration are altruistic? Like, do you think they want what's good for you and people who support your cause, or do you think that they're trying to leverage this to get the upper hand against the country of Canada as a whole?
I've studied foreign policy at the university level. I have an honors degree in political science, and I have an honors degree in law from the London School of Economics. Don't you think that communist Ottawa is leveraging communist China against Alberta? I mean, come on. I mean, we live in the world of realpolitik.
But you don't mind being a pawn in that fight?
We're not a pawn. I mean, we're talking to them about our aspirations, and we have our goals and objectives. So, we're not a pawn. We're actually more like a rook or a queen on a chessboard, moving forward in the direction that we want to move freely on the board. The pawns are...
That's such a good answer. The pawn right now is Canada. Canada, flat economy. Now it's in this crazy position of choosing between China and America. I mean, you could even argue Mark Carney, his speech at Davos was kind of bragging about being a pawn, the middle powers having to band together, essentially now having to decide again between China and USA. You could say Canada right now is a pawn because of the situation left to us by Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government, the lost Liberal decade that we all had to suffer through.
Provincial premiers like Danielle Smith that are being manipulated by Carney and Eby and communist China to do their globalist bidding, as far as I'm concerned.
When you mentioned that you've met with people in the State Department, you feel as though that message has been conveyed to Scott Bessent. That's why he made the comments he did. How high up are the meetings that you're taking? Are there names, for example, of people that you're meeting with that we would recognize offhand?
I'm not sure about that, probably. I mean, we're meeting at a very high level. People in our meetings are going, direct.
Stephen Miller?
I'm not going to say. I mean,
why not?
We're not, because we have an agreement with the people that we're meeting with that we're not disclosing the identities of the people that we're meeting with. So
why not? May I ask?
Well, because it's an agreement. So that's all.
But again, like, would it be reasonable to question the motivations of making that
well, that's
agreement?
probably why we're not talking about it. We don't want them being bothered by people from the press in Canada asking them silly questions. They don't want to be wasting their time answering questions from the press, right? And we're fine with that. We don't care. I mean, we know already that our meetings are paying dividends when the U.S. Secretary of Treasury is announcing the fact that the U.S. would be open to a pipeline through the Pacific Northwest to take David Eby and Communist China out of control of the Alberta oil field.
May I ask then?
Look, this is what it actually looks like. I bet you a lot of Canadians in the world, not just me, but just who are watching CTV, for the first time they're seeing actual pushback to the mainstream narrative. I mean, you would hope that Canada wouldn't have to have gotten to the place where it's in now, where Alberta, actually also Quebec, there's separatist movements in those two provinces coming up to the surface. But maybe if Canada had a real open dialogue for the last 15 years and there was true back and forth on these media networks, maybe we would not be in this situation right now. But this is like actual opposition to the mainstream narrative. It's just so beautiful, so wonderful to see. I love it.
In a different way, have there been conversations, you know, among yourself or people in the movement with, for example, as high as President Trump?
No. Well, I mean, I haven't. I'm not sure about David Cameron. He's not really part of our movement and part of what we're doing. He's the leader of the Republican Party of Alberta. He claims to have been to Mar-a-Lago and, you know, whatever. You know, we don't need to meet with President Trump. We're really technicians when it comes right down to it, right? At the end of the day, you know, our next delegation to Washington, you know, we're going to have bankers, economists, corporate lawyers, et cetera, to help with this feasibility study that we're conducting, right? And we're going to be putting together, you know, what a potential deal memo could look like and put together a complete dossier so that we can just hand it over to whoever the government of Alberta is in power and say, hey, if Ottawa is giving you a hard time, here's an easy way out. There's a large credit facility that's available through Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or whoever in the event that Ottawa tries to cut off your money.
On the question of feasibility and the situation that you just lay out, what does it say that if you are preparing for Ottawa, as you characterize it, to play hardball, that you would then lean on credit or whatever it ends up being from the United States? Like, to the people who support your movement, are you not kind of moving from one master to another?
The entire world runs on credit. How much does Canada rely on the United States? If Secretary of Treasury
but you're pitching independence.
just let. So what?
Oh
if
my
Secretary
gosh,
Besant wanted to end Canada tomorrow, it would take one memo to all of the bond rating agencies, Moody's, Standard and Fitch, and Poor's, to say that Canada's a poor risk because of all the various things that the United States is going to do with Canadian credit, and Canada would be over. So Canada is being supported by the United States.
Exactly. I said this earlier in my video today. I almost think I'm taking crazy pills. Like, where are the Canadians out there? I know there's a bunch, but not in mainstream media, who actually understand the situation. By the way, a lot of this stuff is not even that complicated. Canada obviously relies on America already. I know, like, a lot of people that actually watch YouTube understand that, but the just gaslighting that exists on these mainstream channels is unbelievable.
So just stop with this silliness and trying to create this conflation somehow or other between the Alberta independence movement and being beholden to the United States. I know it's a fear-mongering talking point of the mainstream media with regard to Alberta independence, but we're not buying into it. It's ridiculous.
Well, let me
if Pierre would have talked like that, he would have won the election.
If you don't mind, challenge you and just ask, look at what happened based on the scenario you just have outlined because of our dependence on the United States. Look at what they're able to exact right now. What you are telling your supporters, with great respect, is that you will be independent. You will be free of the suppression. Right?
Nobody's independent in the modern world. But do you think that...
That is such a bad question. Some of those other questions were fine, but oh my gosh.
We would be running to communist China the way that Mark Carney is. Mark Carney's making Canada dependent on communist China. And to quote a good friend of mine, David Redmond, who's one of the best, North American defense analysts going. David Redmond stated clearly on a policy panel, just 2 weeks ago, communist China is not a trading partner. They are an enemy. So you want to talk about treasonous, swearing allegiance to communist China in Beijing while invoking the New World Order and then coming back to Canada.
I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the New World Order.
threatening war with the United States of America under Article 5 of the NATO treaty certainly smacks as being a lot more treasonous than anything that we're doing.
And I have to say, I have interviewed at least 5 ministers from the government in the last 2 weeks since that China trip and pressed them very hard on exactly what you're laying out. Is this really the kind of partnership that we want to align ourselves with?
Vashi is actually decent, I would say. I don't agree with all of her takes and stuff like that, but in terms of the mainstream anchors on these channels, she might be the best that there is in Canada for not always taking the left-wing point of view.
I understand the point you're making. My point is you have convinced people, and lots of them who have stopped me here, that what awaits a separate and free and independent Alberta is true independence.
No, there's no such
That
thing.
is such a bad question again. It's the same question she just asked, but Rath has a brilliant response here.
It's true independence.
No, there's no such thing as true independence.
Do you think your supporters understand that?
Stop interrupting for a second.
Do you think the supporters understand that? That's very condescending, I would say, for sure. Come on. Everyone understands that Alberta is not just going to be separated from literally the world and be levitated up into space and then trade with each other. What, the Oilers play the Flames 82 times a year and then they have the fake Stanley Cup playoffs? Alberta's still going to exist in the same spot geographically, and it's going to have to deal with America and then other countries as well. The former Canada, the European Union, whoever, but America to a huge degree, of course, like Canada already does right now.
90% of our trade is north and south with the United States of America. So all of this phony, we hate the Americans, Canadians should be afraid of Americans, Alberta must be completely independent from the United States of America. We don't live in a vacuum. So even the premise of your question, quite frankly, and with respect, is quite silly.
So you basically don't envision, for example, ever being truly free of the United States, even if the...
Come on, man. Do you know how much poverty everybody would be in any province, Alberta, Ontario, anywhere, if there was no trade with America, if we were truly independent? The country would change in such a bad way. Oh my gosh, man.
Administration
Again,
switches.
The premise of your question...
a Democrat could be elected after President Trump.
The premise of your question is completely silly. Nobody ever envisions a day where the Alberta economy is completely decoupled from the economy of the United States of America. 90% of our trade is north and south. So that's not going to change if a Democrat gets elected. All of our relationships, business relationships, familial relationships, etc., will remain. That doesn't make us less independent. I mean, the premise of your question, again, with respect, is quite silly.
So obviously we'll finish it there. I kind of don't think the mainstream media even knows how to talk to a guy like Jeff Rath. They've just been programmed in the Liberal Party, Conservative Party, NDP Party dialogue there, and they know that none of those parties are really going to step out of the bounds. This is so fun to watch. And again, it's the only political movement of my life I've actually been inspired by in Canada, and there's not even a close second. It's unbelievable. Anyway, with that said, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Please like. Have a great day. I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers, so if you can help me out, that'd be fantastic. I need 1,000. I'm still just doing this for free, so once I hit 1,000, at least I can make a little money. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.